Please take them to the hospital. But the first thing I want to do is say thank you everybody for coming. My name is Christian Acosta. There's just a few signs everywhere to show it to you in case you forget. They've done a good job. I want to thank Sue Snowden for helping me so much and doing a lot of work. She is tireless. I want to thank Linda Stock also. Both of them have done amazing things for me. And thank you also, Brian, for being so generous, and Samantha for allowing us to use this great venue. This is a fantastic place. I couldn't have asked for a nicer place to start out and for a greater crowd to come. So the theme for me tonight is pretty simple. It's just look at the difference that one single person can make. Donald Trump, right? There is no doubt in my mind, there should be no doubt in yours, that Donald Trump, with his improbable election, saved our country from 8 years of economic stagnation, 8 years of apologizing for the things that make our country great, and 8 years of just general lawlessness and not helping out the working class. That's what he saved us from, one single person. Woo! Definitely. We have a few Trump supporters in the room.
Yeah.
But also, look at our new governance in Florida. Look at what has happened so fast. Our new governor, Ron DeSantis, our new lieutenant governor, Jeanette Nunez. In 5 short months, look what they've done. They've taken a strong stance saying Florida will not be a lawless state. We will not accept sanctuary cities. We will enforce immigration law. That's 5 short months. They've also begun fighting against the opioid crisis that's tearing apart our communities. And they've started putting together money and asking for federal money to help us with our environmental concerns, with algae and with restoring flow in the Everglades. That's what they've done in 5 months. So look what individual people can do. And the point I want to make here today is that I know I can be that person to make a difference here for you in our District 21 in Palm Beach County. Thank you. You deserve a representative who is going to listen to you as much as Donald Trump listens to America. You deserve a representative who will act on your values and your beliefs as quickly and as decisively as our governor and lieutenant governor have here in Florida. But most importantly, you deserve a representative who will treat this job as the highest of honors and not as some sort of self-entitlement the way lazy Lois Frankel does.
Yeah. Woohoo!
Look recently at what happened with immigration in sanctuary cities. They wanted to send 500 to 1,000 legal immigrants here in West Palm Beach. What did lazy Lois do?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. She waited until other people found out it was going to happen, until many of you raised the alarm saying we don't want this, until our great governor immediately said no, we're not going to have it, until he called our president who said absolutely not, it's not going to occur. And then she came out on the news and said, oh, you know, we're welcoming, but not to those people. That was what she said. Folks, that's not leadership, and it's not even compassion. What that is just plain laziness. Do you want to be represented by someone who's lazy?
No.
No, absolutely not. That's not Palm Beach County. That's not our character. We need to make sure that people in Washington understand, as we know, that the border has to be secure, that we have to have our immigration laws enforced, that we have to make sure illegal drugs and opioids cannot come through our borders because it's all tied together. And we need to go to Washington and take that message and make sure that it gets enacted the way Donald Trump is trying to do, but constantly being stopped. There are politicians who will tell you that you have to choose between immigration and border enforcement. Those politicians are cowards. That is not the truth. America is the greatest, strongest, and most generous country on earth. There is no reason that we cannot have both successful, safe immigration legally and border security. We can have both, and that's the message I'm going to take to Congress. Another message I'm going to take to Congress is that we are on the right track economically. You'll hear politicians like Lazy Lois try and tell you that the Trump tax cuts didn't help Americans. This is what they'll say. But their own Bible, the New York Times, you know, recently with the basically Dear Stormer advertisement, tragic. But the New York Times, their own Bible, not mine, it says 64.8% of Americans received a tax cut and paid less in taxes. They can't argue with that. It's a fact. More money was in the working class person's paycheck every month, and more money was in their pocket at the end of the year all told. They were benefited by this tax cut, and politicians like Frankel will lie and try and say that's not true. Well, what we need to do is go there and be loud and proud and say, this is how you run an economy. You cut taxes, you put more money in people's pockets, you make sure you streamline regulations, and you help businesses get back on track. We're going to go there, we're going to continue to defend the tax cuts. We're also going to do everything possible to support small businesses because they're the ones that drive our economy. You put that together and you've got a winning recipe. People like to talk about benefiting our communities, okay? Well, how do you build a strong community? You do it at the community level. It's not rocket science. And the bottom line is, more money in people's pockets and more support for the local store on the corner is exactly how you start. And that's our politics and our economics, not theirs. And that's the message we need to make sure everybody in this country understands, despite their attempt to whitewash it. Segue a little bit, who here loves Israel?
Yeah. Woo!
Right now, we have a president that has been the greatest president for Israel in, as far as I know, ever. Okay?
Yeah.
The bottom line is Israel's the only true democracy in the Middle East.
That's right.
They are our strongest and most reliable ally in the region. We can always, America can always count on them. So shouldn't they be able to count on us?
Yes.
Because for 8 years, we all know that they really couldn't. You know the years I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They could not be certain that we would step up for them at the UN. We took a knee on a couple of those votes. They could not be certain that we'd go over and value their benefit or their position in the region. They didn't know. Well, now, one man, Donald Trump, has made it clear that we will always support Israel. I support his move of the embassy to Jerusalem. I support his recognition that Israel has to be the owner of the Golan Heights for their own self-defense. And like Donald Trump, my support for Israel is non-negotiable. And what's also non-negotiable is my support for fighting against global anti-Semitism. We have our own congressmen, and you all know this story. We have our own congresspeople who are in our own government in Washington saying anti-Semitic things, not criticizing Israel. We're not talking about criticisms of policy or criticisms of the country. We're talking about openly anti-Semitic statements, open attacks on Jewish people. That's not acceptable. And what did Lois Frankel do about it?
Nothing.
See the trend? Nothing. Lazy Lois did nothing. She supported that general resolution where they basically condemned everything under the sun, and then they just sweep it under the rug. But that's not okay. That's basically silence, and we all know that silence is consent. And we're never going to consent to stop fighting against anti-Semitism, here and abroad, period.
Yeah. Woo! Right on, Christian.
That's a promise that we have to make to all of our Jewish residents here in America and around the world.
Yeah.
Another promise that we have made, and that's very important, is the promise that America made to all its working class that if they paid into Medicare and they paid into Social Security, it would be there for them in their retirement. That promise now is under attack by the 20-some-odd thousand people who are trying to run for president. Many of them have signed on to this Medicare for All plan, and they say, oh, we're going to expand it. But they're lying to you. Every one of them under pressure will admit that their actual plan is to make private insurance illegal. Your Medicare plan is a negotiated private insurance plan with payment structure from the government. When it gets made illegal, your plan will not be there. They will promise you that a replacement plan will be identical. But they don't control the doctors, they don't control the nurses, they don't control the technicians, they don't control the networks. How can they guarantee you that the replacement plan will be the same? The answer is they can't. It's a promise. And I remember a couple promises that were made to us about our premiums not going up, about being able to keep our doctor. I'm done with those promises. I don't want them anymore, and you shouldn't either. The bottom line is we need to defend Medicare the way it is. We need to work on increasing our medical options because that's the only way to lower premiums. And we need to make sure that none of these take over everything and put it at the top level plans actually get enacted. And that's what I'm going to go and fight against. And in the same tone, I'm going to go up there and make sure that if anybody wants to try and play with long-term, make changes to long-term Social Security, we're going to prevent that too, because it's the same promise. Workers have paid in, they've made their entire life plan around it, and now they're collecting. We need to make sure we keep that promise to them, because it's very, very important. So I promise to go up there and to defend both Medicare, to prevent this Medicare for all fiasco, and to protect Social Security. And on a final note, what I want to cover is a different type of promise, but that's important to me, it's important to my father. That's a promise that comes from the founding of this country. We were founded effectively in war. We are found in revolution. There's an inherent promise in being an American that you have the right to your own life, that you control your own life, and individual liberty is what matters most to us. Inherent in that message is that you also have a right to defend yourself, that you also have a right to protect the liberty which your ancestors have fought for, which your family members or you have fought for, and which we all carry so dear in our hearts. That has two parts to it, both domestic and foreign. Our domestic protection of our ability to defend ourselves is the Second Amendment, period. The Second Amendment is, behind the first, the most important one we have. And there's no light of day between me and the Second Amendment. I am not going to allow any infringement on our rights to protect ourselves or our families. I will never go to any single person and say, you must outsource your ability to defend yourself to some other agency. I will never do that. The second half is our right to protect ourselves when it comes to the rest of the world, abroad. And we're talking about our military and our servicemen and women. We have a history of being involved in many conflicts, many of them for the good of the entire planet. And as such, we also have a duty to every single one of those servicemen and women who come home, and we will take care of them and make sure they get the best possible care and the best possible coverage. That's really important to me, for my family, and for many of the people I know. What we need to do is make sure that the VA is never treated as it's good enough. Never. The VA may be making a lot of progress, but it needs to keep getting better. Continual improvement is nothing, that's the absolute minimum that our servicemen and women deserve. So we need to keep making it better. We need to improve the mental health component of our VA, because that's the type of issues we're having now more recently that we're not able to handle. We also need to make sure that our veterans are able to go and choose where they want to go and actually have it paid for, and not have the bureaucracy fail and a private provider end up saying, well, I can't cover you because they never paid me last week. That has to stop. And I'm going to make sure that every single vote that comes up that favors veterans gets a giant yes from Palm Beach County.
Yeah! Woo!
So I just want to end with the same statement I made at the beginning, that one person can make a difference. I believe I can be that person here in District 21, and I want that honor, and I will work for that honor. But every single one of you can also be that person. We need as much help as possible. We need to have donations, we need to have volunteers, we need to have as much energy, charisma, and communication as we can get. We are going to mobilize more people than the other side will. We are going to have a better ground game than the other side will. That's how we're going to win, because the energy in Palm Beach County is second to none. And we're going to show it to them, we're going to win, we're going to take our message to Washington, D.C., and we're going to help our president keep this country great.